Welcome to Taiwan Report News Brief, news, analysis, and context from Taichung, Taiwan. I'm Donovan Smith. All right, up today in the program, a minimum wage hike is planned but is panned by businesses. Foxconn Chairman says China's days as the world's factory are over. Money is flowing back into Taiwan. Controls on Chinese investment are to be tightened. There's infighting in the KMT, but Johnny Chiang gets a big boost. But up first, lots of headlines. Taiwan will become a super-aged society by 2025, meaning that 1 in 5 citizens will be aged over 65, due mainly to a falling birth rate and a fast-aging population. The National Development Council reported on Tuesday Taiwan is projected to see negative population growth this year. A Taiwan community in Pingdong County's Mudan Township is angry after a set of totems carved by a local artist were altered during restoration. The totems had depicted Taiwan men and women with their lower bodies uncovered. Feeling that the totems in their original form were indecent, the contractor covered their lower halves with colorful skirts. The added skirts are also not the type of clothing Taiwan would wear. After Han Guoyu suggested goose eggs helped female fertility at the KMT Kaohsiung mayoral campaign rally, sales of goose products have risen 30%. Ordinary hotels will be able in future to accept individuals who need to be quarantined to accommodate heavy demand at the current level of arrivals, the Central Epidemic Command Center said. Taiwan sees up to 2,000 new arrivals per day who need a place to stay during their mandatory 14-day quarantine, with an average of close to 20,000 people in quarantine on any given day. An experimental COVID-19 vaccine developed by Taiwanese maker Adimune Corp has been given conditional approval to enter human trials, according to Taiwan's Food and Drug Administration. The Taipei Parks and Streetlights Office has decided to proceed with a third appeal against indigenous singer Panay Kusui and other protesters for violating a park ordinance and not paying fines for their violation. For more than 3 years, Panay and her group have staunchly opposed a regulation defining and zoning what can be classified as indigenous peoples' traditional territories and lands enacted by the Council of Indigenous Peoples in February of 2017. DPP legislator Mark Ho Zhiwei is making good on a promise he made last month. The lawmaker pledged to give away 1,000 fried chicken cutlets if the police unearthed any counterfeit stimulus vouchers. On August 13th, police in the central county of Yunlin uncovered an operation that was creating counterfeit stimulus vouchers. Oops. A substantial portion of the 230 billion NT budgeted by the Executive Yuan for the third phase of the forward-looking infrastructure development program will be going toward rail construction and the development of 5G infrastructure. The proposed budget would be divided into 2 parts, 124.1 billion for the next fiscal year and 105.9 billion for fiscal year 2022. The seeds of 4 plant species chosen by Taiwanese researchers will be heading into space in October as part of an international research project led by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. After a few months aboard the ISS, the seeds will be sent back to their country of origin and planted to determine if different radiation levels and gravity found in space affects the seeds in any way. Taiwan is one of 9 countries participating in the project. The annual Taiwan Automation, Intelligence, and Robot Show will begin August 19th with displays of robots, industrial components, and other devices at 2,800 booths. Products on display will include various types of service robots, such as home robots and surgical robots, smart living appliances, image recognition tools, and machine components. Legislative Yuan President Yeo Shi-kun revealed in an interview that he has invited Czech Senate President Milos Vystrčil to the Legislative Yuan during his visit to Taiwan later this month. Meanwhile, lawmakers from across party lines yesterday established two parliamentary friendship groups aimed at improving relations with the Czech Republic and Spain at an inauguration ceremony at the Legislative Yuan in Taipei. The newly opened Taiwan Representative Office in Somaliland is the only overseas office using the term Taiwan, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Tuesday, describing it as a significant achievement diplomatically. Taiwan's de facto embassy in Somaliland formally opened Monday in Hargeisa after Taiwan and Somaliland signed an agreement in February to set up offices in each other's territory. Labor groups on Tuesday praised a proposed minimum wage hike for this year, while industry representatives expressed disappointment, saying that it would create a greater burden for businesses amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The Basic Wage Deliberation Committee, convened by the Ministry of Labor and comprised of workers, employers, and scholars, said Tuesday that the minimum monthly wage in Taiwan should be raised to 200 NT to 24,000 NT, while the minimum hourly wage should increase 2 NT to 160 NT per hour. The proposal still needs to be approved by the cabinet. If passed, it will apply to all workers in Taiwan except for foreign domestic workers who are not covered under the Labor Standards Act. Hanhai Precision Industry Company, also known as Foxconn, their chairman, Young Liu, said it's gradually adding more capacity outside of China, the main base of production for gadgets from iPhones to Dell desktops and Nintendo Switches. The proportion outside of the country is now at 30%, up from 25% last June. That ratio will rise as the company moves more manufacturing to Southeast Asia and other regions to avoid escalating tariffs on Chinese-made goods headed to U.S. markets, Liu told reporters after his company reported financial results. Quote, no matter if it's India, Southeast Asia, or the Americas, there will be a manufacturing ecosystem in each, Liu told investors in a conference call, adding that while China will still play a key role in Foxconn's manufacturing empire, the country's days as the world's factory are done. Now, that is a remarkably blunt statement, and one I'm sure caused concern in China. Apple is assembling a series of suppliers to invest in building iPhones in India, with billions being invested by key Taiwanese companies like Hanhai and Wistron. Interestingly, the world's biggest shoemaker that you've never heard of, Taiwanese giant Baocheng, already moved almost all of their international shoe factories out of China a few years ago, leaving only factories supplying the local Chinese market. They had originally supplied companies like Nike and Adidas from Taichung, where they still have their headquarters a block from my office. At their peak in China, if I recall correctly, they essentially had a city of employees, over 1 million at one point in Guangdong province. Now they're mostly supplying from Southeast Asia. Most materials development and R&D, however, remain in Taiwan, with suppliers scattered through mostly Taichung and Zhanghua. For years, companies like Baocheng have been filtering out of China due to rising labor costs, high turnover, regulations, IP theft, and currency restrictions. Now, the trade war with the U.S. has accelerated that trend. In related news, the U.S. has tightened restrictions on suppliers of Chinese cell phone giant Huawei, which may mean Taiwanese suppliers like TSMC and and MediaTek may be cut off from a major client. As of Thursday last week, the Ministry of Finance had received applications to repatriate 207.6 billion NT in overseas funds since a repatriation law took effect on August 15th last year. The legislature passed the Act on the Use of and Taxation on Inward Remittances of Overseas Funds in early July last year. It provides a tax rate of 8% in the first year and 10% in the second year for repatriated funds, with further reductions to a preferential rate of 4% in the first year and 5% in the second year if the funds are returned and invested on time. The regulations remain valid for 2 years as part of government incentives to help individuals and for-profit enterprises rebalance their international investments and encourage them to return funds to Taiwan. The ministry had earlier estimated that there would be applications to repatriate $133.3 billion in the year following promulgation of the law. From last month to this month, there were applications to repatriate $2 billion to $3 billion every day. In other words, they're doing far better than expected. Chinese investments in Taiwan are to be more strictly regulated under a draft amendment to the measures governing investment permits to the people of the mainland area, the Ministry of Economic Affairs has announced. The amendment would expand the definition of Chinese capital and close loopholes that could be used by investors to skirt regulations on Chinese capital. Quote, the U.S., Japan, and Germany are all tightening foreign investment requirements for China, a commission spokesperson told a news conference. In Taiwan, we have separate laws governing foreign investment from China and the rest of the world, so we are only tightening the laws regarding Chinese investment. He also said that the regulatory changes are to determine whether Chinese investors have material control of a company. KMT caucus whip Lin Weizhou stirred up controversy in the KMT by saying it is time to say goodbye to the hand wave, referring to the tide of support that propelled Han Kuo-yu and others into victory in the 2018 local elections. Treat it, meaning the hand wave, as a legend, Lin wrote, adding that the KMT should make changes and work hard to regain the public's trust. In an interview later in the day, Lin said Saturday's loss was a continuation of the party's defeat in the January 11th presidential and legislative elections. The Han wave had been the KMT mainstream, but that was no longer the case, he said. The KMT might have to recognize the reality that it can no longer rely on the Han wave, which, while it might have helped the party pick up some votes on Saturday, did not have a major effect, he said. The KMT could not even hold on to its base, proof that the Han wave could no longer be seen as the KMT's savior, Lin said. Naturally, Han's remaining supporters weren't happy about this. The reality is, however, the Han wave was over long ago, and this is a very belated realization. Han supporters are also unhappy at Chen Chi-mai's win in the Kaohsiung by-election and are reportedly already preparing to launch a recall campaign against him. Meanwhile, beleaguered KMT chair Johnny Chiang, however, got some good news for a change. Former KMT chairman Eric Chu on Sunday said that the party should not get bogged down in personnel matters at this time and that it should instead focus on embracing mainstream public opinion and values. Instead, he said the party should take the time to re-examine itself, calling this a laborious and brutal process. Essentially, what he's saying is that Johnny Chiang shouldn't be removed from the chair position, and that Chiang's focus on reforms is the correct path. Chu is clearly angling to run for KMT chair again next May, but doesn't want the job now. Why would he? The party is in shambles, and the political minefield of getting reforms passed in the party Congress lays ahead. Better to let Chiang take the heat and burn his political capital, then take over when the hard part is done. But the really significant good news for Chiang is that finally new Taipei Mayor Hou You-yi has finally weighed in on his side. He flat out said he hopes Chiang will continue to lead and to continue with his reform campaign. He also called for party unity and for the party to return to following public opinion. Again, like Eric Chu, he didn't directly mention Chiang's internally controversial plan to finally kill off the 1992 consensus, but like Chu, his call to return to what the public will is clearly a coded way of saying he does. That Ho spoke up is interesting. He almost never wades into party or national politics, preferring to stick to his job. Ho is now Taiwan's most popular politician, and Eric Chu is in the top 10, so they have some influence. Most of the party heavyweights have already weighed in against Chiang, but now he's got at least 3 in his corner, including former legislative speaker Wang Jinping, who also said some nice things the other day. But former president and KMT chair Ma Ying-jeou and other former KMT chairs and heavyweights like Lian Zhan, Hong Shou-ju, Wu Po-xiong, and all these guys have all openly attacked him. The battle over party reform in the party Congress in September is going to be very interesting to watch. I hope you can join our patrons in supporting the show on Patreon, and because every little bit helps in keeping this project going. We put a lot of work into it. All right, be sure to hit like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and tune in tomorrow.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at report.tw.
哎呦，就是那个台湾狗啦，最喜欢我的台湾狗了。